Dr. Chai is an active scholar in curriculum development and teacher education. She has published a pedagogical material for learners in study abroad contexts titled Action, China, a guide to using Chinese in the community. This material was published by Routledge in 2018. Dr. Chai's presentation will be focused on how to elicit cultural performances in the PCA classroom when using the most popular textbook, Integrate Chinese. Dr. Chai.
Thank you, Yu Lao Shi. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to talk about the lower levels. The question I will try to answer here is, if the textbook is a non-performed culture informed, how do we use it? And more specifically, how do we evaluate the integrated Chinese from a performed culture point of view? And how do we instructors apply performed culture to courses that have to adopt integrated Chinese as the main textbook? And finally, what kind of adjustments can we make for online class instruction? Now, here are the two levels. The instructional pace may look very similar to some of your programs, and we work on 5 lessons for each course. And the audio drills on the right column that I added, audio drills are what I made to accompany each dialogue, and on average, 10 audio drills for each dialogue. And audio drills help scaffold students' preparation for the performance-based class, and you will see some examples very soon later. The students use Kubler's ebook from the school library website as a reference to study the structural explanations of most new characters that we see in integrated Chinese. And also students work a little bit on a Chinese TV series in each course towards the end of a semester. Now, the overall instructional goal is to train students' intercultural competency so that they can recognize and respond to everyday situations and events in Chinese culture and be able to present themselves in a way that a native Chinese person would find comfortable. Now, for many years, we had 4 class hours on 3 days per week. And one of the days had a second class, back-to-back class. And 3 of them were called lectures, and 1 of them was called discussion. And based on the performed culture mindset, I reinvented this structure into 3 ACT classes and a FACT class. The ACT class is a Chinese-only environment, and we perform real-life situations. Now, Spoken 1 works on the first half of a new dialogue, and the Spoken 2 works on the second half of that dialogue. And by the time we finish this dialogue, settle down the spoken skills, we do a fact class. This is when we discuss and reflect on the factual knowledge of grammar, words, and cultural rules, and allow questions to be asked. And the fact class is mainly in English. The reason we do fact class after ACT spoken class is really because it's important to train students to self-study and not always rely on the teacher. And I also schedule it on these 2 classes in a row day is really because students need to prepare on average 2 hours, and some of them do 3 hours preparation before each ACT spoken class. So such an arrangement can help balance out daily workload. And by the way, before each ACT spoken class, students don't have any written homework. What they are supposed to do is work with all the audio and video materials and rehearse, build fluency, and get ready for class. And in class, students don't have the textbook open or don't look at any script. And the 4th class, reading and composition class, adds character text into performances. So the class performance is more integrated. And by the time when students finish both dialogues of 1 lesson, they write an essay in 2 drafts. The first draft is typed on Google Doc and receive the instructor's feedback, allows enough time for revision. And the next week, students turn in a second draft, a revised version written by hand. Now the darker boxes mark an instructional cycle for 1 entire lesson. As you can see for the evaluation part, a big part comes from daily class performance. Students, the idea is this is not just called active participation, because the students don't volunteer to answer. The instructor randomly calls students' names at all times. So students need to really get ready for the entire class. I put 50%, but any range between 40% all the way to 70% is fine. Now, since perform culture strive for authentic cultural performances in the target culture, integrated Chinese gives us some big challenges. Now, the first is the default background culture is not entirely Chinese culture or American culture. The textbook, the character cast tells us that all these student characters are in an unspecified American university. But then, as you can see from the video screenshots, the videos of the dialogues present a Chinese social environment. And all the off-campus characters are Chinese performers speaking Chinese, such as shop assistant, student cafeteria chef, although the US dollar is used, doctor, travel agent, and apartment rental agent, as well as airport check-in attendant when the Chinese character needs to fly back to China. And there are also scenes when Chinese is speaking to Chinese and American characters speaking among American characters in Chinese language. Now, so the challenge here is because this is a mixed social cultural environment, and it could mislead learners to believe that, oh, American culture can be easily mapped onto Chinese culture. And Chinese language can be learned regardless of target cultural expectations. And in order to try to fix this issue, the class performances need to have a clear context, and we follow the local rules. For example, we say, oh, now we are in China, okay, Suzhou University Study Abroad Program. And you are American student, you need to buy shoes. And I am a shop assistant of a sports shop. And in this context, we use the Chinese shoe size system. And the context can be in America as well, but the two roles need to speak Chinese for a reason between one Chinese and one American. The American role usually helps Chinese visitors get things done in the campus area or the local community setting. For example, what I said was, you're an American student and I am a new Chinese student. We are new roommates and we are here at Macy's and you help me buy shoes. And in this case, we use the American shoe size system. And if the Chinese character raised some concern about how shoe size can be converted, this prop can quickly help. So in general, the idea is it's not like, oh, you're a shop assistant and you're a customer and let's buy shoes and go. The next challenge is a good number of dialogue scripts appear inauthentic. And here are some examples. And in order to still rehearse these target expressions, the instructor needs to find other more appropriate contexts or modify the scripts accordingly. For example, greetings. Now, two college students meeting on campus for the first time won't in reality address each other as Mr. and Miss. But we can set up a context of, say, business conference registration and have an American intern ask the native Chinese conference attendees last name and say, oh, Mr. or Miss so-and-so, and then give the conference badge. And the audio drill here helps students prepare for class performance. So the audio drill MP3 goes like, 先生, Wang, Wang 先生, Gao, Gao 先生, Li, Li 先生. So normal speed of speech, and the students need to pause and repeat after. An example here, visiting friends. When visiting someone's house for the first time, and if the host is a new acquaintance, the guest usually wouldn't directly ask for a specific drink. But what we can do is coach a few new phrases and have the host offers drinks, and the guest politely refuses before finally accepting it. And set up another context, say a street vendor in China that sells various beverage drinks, and have the customer role say, I want a bottle of Coke or other beverage drinks. Here, asking directions. Here are two student characters trying to drive to Chinatown. And one of the British student character is saying, drive south. And when you arrive at the third crossroad, turn west. So the thing is, we don't use a cardinal direction, say north, south, east, west, in an unspecified city when it is also not known if the street network orientation is a straightforward north, south, east, west layout. And Beijing natives usually do have a sense of direction. So a possible context we can set up is saying, we are in Beijing, and an American student in a study abroad program asks a Beijing native on the street for directions. And in this context, it is necessary to use a map of Beijing, or at least a simplified version of a local map, and mark a few landmark destinations. Here, party. Now, no matter if it's in a Chinese or American culture, a party will rarely involve making singing and dancing be part of the plan. But it is possible to plan a karaoke only, or watch a movie or play games after the meal. So the audio can present and coach a modified script. Add a question so that the instructor can elicit a response in class, and plug in some vocab, more realistically used vocab, either from the current lesson or from previous lessons. So the MP3 goes like, 我们今天晚上做什么？我们先吃饭，吃完饭再唱歌。吃饭，看电影。我们今天晚上做什么？我们先吃饭，吃完饭再看电影。So this is how the MP3 goes. And next, perform culture comes with a list of specific teaching techniques, and I want to show you one of them. And what you will see is when a student or more students can't say a longer sentence, the instructor builds it up and then finally goes back to the problem student. Make sure he not only say it right, but also do it right.
好，跟我说啊，生日礼物。
生日礼物。
好，送给你的生日礼物。
送给你的生日礼物。
好，这是送给你的生日礼物。这是送给你的生日礼物。继续说。
这是送给你的生日礼物。
很好。
这是送给你的生日礼物。
很好。
这是送给你的生日礼物。
对了，很好。
这是送给你的生日礼物。
对了，对了，很好。好，我是高晓玲。好，那请说。
就是呢，你送给就是我送给你的生日。
好，谢谢，谢谢。
And in terms of online class, not that much is really needed, but a few things to share with you. The instructor can take advantage of the actual furniture at home to set up contexts. And while two students perform a scene on their own, the instructor needs to handle the props for them, whereas in actual class, the two student performers handle the props by themselves. And it is important to test the camera angle to include the entire scene, especially when one or two rows need to both stand up and sit down, and so students know exactly what the teacher is demonstrating. And since sometimes the instructor is a little bit far away from the laptop, it is necessary to use the wireless earbuds so that we can hear each other very clearly. And so in general, what do we learn from this? I just want to say it's important to stay focused with culturally appropriate performances. And if the textbook doesn't provide role models of socialization, then it is the job of the instructor to make labor-intensive adaptations and to make sure the right things, to coach the right way of doing things. And if you can choose, Walker's and Kupler's materials can free instructors from making such adaptations and make both teaching process and learning process more efficient. I want to thank you for listening to me, and now let's welcome Yu Lao Shi.